for starters, this is going to be a little bit of a different setup than we're used to. I'm just going to kind of kick it off into the basics. When we talk about imaging, what is it that we mean by the image? Like it's some people think like, okay, this is when we're going to talk about panning, or this is where we're going to talk about the disbursement of sounds. And in some ways, yes, but also in some ways, no. The image is basically, to me, the image represents the utmost furthest sides of the entire mix frame that you can reach. So wherever, as far as the sounds have been pushed to the sides, and that can be from any number of ways and means. So from things like offset panning to actual just normal gain panning to things like imagers that do psychoacoustic levels of panning, to pushing things way outside using like phase inversion techniques that start to like trick the ear into thinking something is actually wider than it is. Wherever those finite boundaries are, wherever they exist on the furthest sides, that's part of the image. Then we end up with also our height. So how high up the sound is, that's part of our image. What is in the center, that's part of our image. But it's not just placement. It's everything from frequency response to dispersion to, we also have like depth in the image. We have what's furthest back, what's closest to us. And so we end up, when you start to think about each of those degrees of freedom, you kind of build this three-dimensional pyramid from the listener outwards to the speakers. And so that is basically your mix frame. And the size of it is determinate upon the content, whatever's in there. There's no right or wrong way to have good imaging. It's just all about what makes sense for the piece of music, what fits in with the genre. For those of you who are in the approach normally, you know we do not subscribe to rules or standards or any of this other stuff. We just like to look at what it is we're trying to achieve. How are other people achieving those goals? How can we achieve those goals like other people? Or how can we do that maybe better than them? How can we improve on their ways and means of achieving their goals? And so for me, that's the image. That's the frame. It's this three-dimensional pyramid that kind of comes off from the listener. And we're going to dig through some content and talk about how to achieve those things. But first, as we know with the best practices, it's all about ear training. In this example, we can hear that there's some high frequency spread. We hear a lot more of those lows. We actually hear a lot of the lows spread on the sides. And I'm going to start deconstructing this with a few tools and techniques on the master bus to sort of prove what I'm hearing and also what I'm seeing. And why I'm saying like you don't need these imagers is because of the stuff we're about to do on the master bus. So for those of you who are in the approach, you know what the ghost zone is all about. I'm going to throw the ghost zone on here, and we're going to start listening to just the sideband now and start deconstructing that, but in mono. So now we're going to take the stereo content, and we're going to listen to that stereo content in mono, which means we're taking the two sides. It's only the two-side information now, and we're folding that down to sum the two sides together to make it so we have a mono signal that is only the true stereo content by inverting one side on top of itself. So this is now our sideband information, but presented in mono. And of course, it's mono, so the imager is only going to show us signal right down the front. But what are we hearing in here? Let's take it apart. So we've got hats. You can hear the texture, the buzz of that bass top, the real zippery stuff on the top end. You can hear definitely like almost a full snare in the sideband, top end and bottom end. But this bass especially in here, and I'll loop this here. You hear a little bit of the kick, but maybe just maybe some ducking. You can really hear like huge warm low end of the bass tops and some of the high frequency content. And I'm going to prove that is actually what we're getting by going mono. So this is now turning everything into mono, and you can hear what is only now in the middle of the image. So one more time with the mono off, listen to the difference in the highs. Listen to how the high frequency content folds down and goes away, especially in the bass top. Hear that gets duller? One more time. And I'll come down from where the downlifter is. One more time. See that texture that comes off that bass top? One more time. So, what that is the stereo content that's what's in that bass top itself, which is so wide and lush and dope. It's in the top high frequency content. It's also in some of the low mids. Some of that detail, when we fold down to mono, we lose. And so that means part of the image is made up of what would be considered like stereo content, but stereo content that's not mono compatible. When we're talking about things being monocompatible, it's saying how much of the song do you lose when you fold it down? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We're going to get more and more into that as we go, but that's just one example of one person's choices. And again, nothing here is right or wrong. This is just one artist's decision of how they wanted to place aspects of the music within the field itself.